Okay, now we're ready.
Yeah.
Ready for Freddy.
Ready for Freddy. Are your knees steady? Are you rolling in a Chevy? Are you getting it ready? I took the mic straight to the top. Top of this hip-hop gang. No shame, doing it big. Akon, you see, Ludacris doing his thing for Sugar G. With the mind that I trip, that I hit. I'm from the LAC, baby, Cali, baby. One love to the brothers on 3rd Street. Drinking their whiskey and gin. Read your Bible. Pray every day. That's the only way you're gonna make it, man. I'm not Yosemite Sam. I'm Freddie D. Mario Brothers ain't got nothing on me. I stepped once. I stepped twice. That's right. I got advice to make it right. I make it to the top in this industry. I think you wanna be like me for Sugar D. My rhymes are fat. Platinum tracks, always gonna get the rap right through. Forget you, I walked down a red carpet. In case you didn't start it, you heard it now. Booyah, that's right, I do it alright. 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 Like sugar and spice, like Sugar T and E4D. Snoop Doggy Dogg got the twist, smoking on a cigar. That's the trick. He got it going on all the time. He got the ladies in the funky fresh rhyme. But me, Freddie D, jewelry always by the pair, and I do not stare. I glare to the top, don't you see? I'm the big daddy, coming hardcore, G. I be doing it all the time. Willing to bust a hardcore rhyme on time. That's right, it's tight, and I gotta go. But you heard my show. Peace out, really though. Good to go without a word to say. That's why we pray just to make it today.
Where are you here?
Oh, there I am. Hey.
Where are you? Where?
Got me?
Oh boy. Yeah. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me.
Come on, man.
Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. All that long this Jesus journey. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. Yeah.
Walk with my mama.
You walk with my mama.
Walk with me.
Walk with me too.
You walk with my mama.
Yeah.
Walk with me.
And walk with me too.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Jesus journey.
Walk, Jesus.
Walk, Jesus.
Walk with me.
Walk with me. Hold my hand, Lord. Hold my hand. Hold my hand, Lord. hold my hand, Lord, and hold my hand.
Walk with Moses.
You walk with Moses.
Walk with me.
Walk with me.
You walk with Moses. Walk with me.
Walk with me.
While I'm home.
Yeah.
Jesus
journey.
I want Jesus.
I want Jesus to walk with me.
Say, walk with me, Lord. How y'all doing?
Walk with me. Walk with me.
Lord. Walk with me.
Walk with me.
I'm on my
Yeah, Lord.
I want Jesus
I want Jesus
to walk with me.
to walk with
Go ahead,
me. Walk with David, a little shepherd boy.
That's a good that one.
Yeah, you made him a great king. I know David shouted for joy. He walked with David, and he's a little shepherd boy. You made him a great king, and David shouted for joy.
That's right.
Oh, yeah. So walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. All along this Jesus journey. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. You gotta walk with me, Lord.
Yeah! That was rocking great, brother.
Oh, yeah. Does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, or stand in the way of sinners, or sit in the seat of mockers. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Everything he does prospers, not so the wicked. They are like chaff that the wind blows away. Therefore the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the assembly of the righteous. For the Lord watches over the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked shall perish. Blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, or stand in the way of sinners, or sits in the seat of mockers, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. He like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Everything he does prospers, not so the wicked. They are like chaff that the wind blows away. Therefore the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the assembly of the righteous. For the Lord watches over the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked shall perish.
Well, good morning. How is everybody doing this morning? I see a whole bunch of you there in the hive mind, and appreciate you showing up. As mostly not working notes, you know, that you get these big numbers in Twitter, but I really don't think they necessarily count for much. I don't know how many are actually watching in Twitter. Twitter's analytics, I think, are notoriously overblown. If the video just starts scrolling and you're going through your feed, I don't think it's in any way a decent representation of impact. Well, I'm going to do some things today. I'm going to sort of do a week in review. I've done that before, but I'm going to try and do it a little bit more organized way. I'm going to, well, I should probably drop the link. And first I'm going to talk about and sort of set it up, and then we'll give time for people to come in for the different topics. So let's see if I can. There we go. I can pin the link. First topic today is actually not a video from this week. It's a tweet that Phil Nickerson made. Now, Phil Nickerson really got into this channel by the Randos conversations. Phil Nickerson decided he was going to go through the entire conversation playlist. And he did. And I know he did because every time he went through an old Randos conversation, he would leave a comment. And the way YouTube deals with comments is that I get notifications of comments in time, which means if someone comments on an old video, it just shows up in my comments stream. And that's where I first noticed what Philip was doing, because he would go, so there's one playlist that's the conversations playlist, and it's kind of a mess. It's not purely Randos conversations, because there's all kinds of other conversations, even conversations with people with status in it. And so, but he decided to go through that, and he decided to watch every Randos conversation. And usually, and I told him, so he started making comments. So I told him, I said, every time you see a Randos conversation, make a comment. And actually, any of you watching here who, if you ever go into the back catalog, leave a comment on the video. And that helps me know, okay, you're in the back catalog and you watched something and you thought something, because that's really helpful for me. Because I've made so many videos, my channel has an enormous back catalog. And because by virtue of what I do, thank you, Mountie. Because of what I do and how all of these videos, they're not finished products. They're all rough drafts. And they're sort of process thinking for me. You know, people say, well, you know, I like such and such a thing because it's sort of the process. Well, this really is the process. And so then what Nick said was, have PVK's Rando conversations become less personal and more thinky-talky over the last few years? And Food Truck Emily jumped in, and then they went back and forth a little bit. You can find this on Twitter. I watched BJ Novak's movie Vengeance recently and really enjoyed it. And the climax of that movie, let me run through some of the comments that I made on there. I think it's a really good question, and I think there's probably something to that. When the channel was smaller, there was less visibility to them, and that's part of the reason why I like the membership section, because the membership section is smaller. Julian this week left a comment and said, well, a bunch of us on the Discord were talking about how, you know, the membership section is kind of a pain because there are Randos conversations, and if you're not a member, you can't see them. And that's true, but the whole point, and part of the reason that I keep the membership section at like $3 a month, of which Google gets 30%. So I keep the bar really low, so that the bar is really low. And for at least most in the developed world, I mean, you can, if people regularly with memberships join and then stop, and I don't have a problem with that. I mean, I know I have Substack memberships and some people whose work I value and support, and I often hesitate to unsubscribe or to relocate my money to something else because I worry this is going to send a message to them that I no longer like them or I no longer value them or any of those things. And I think all of that is real because people normally have those kinds of feelings. But if you are no longer a member or no longer, you know, I don't have a problem. I completely understand that people have seasons and all of that, and money needs to be relocated and so on and so forth. So I have no problem with people subscribing, watching them, and then unsubscribing and maybe coming back a few months later. I also haven't done a lot of pure Randos conversations recently because I've been trying to deal with a backlog of other conversations. So I did a conversation recently with Christian Baxter. He asked for that months ago. I did a conversation this week with Lucas Van Oss. He's been asking for that conversation for a very long time. And there's a bunch of you who have asked for conversations. And I really didn't have a mechanism of sort of doing that. Now I have a mechanism that led to that blowout that I had before. I've sort of resolved that. And so now I'm working through a backlog of conversations that people have asked for. And it's a sensitive thing because is it fair to give a conversation to someone who, because they've just asked for it, rather than there's a lot of people who have asked for it and I haven't. And so there's no science to that. And so what I try to do is measure, number one, urgency, number two, interest. If they come at me with a really compelling thing to talk about, but then it's really not a pure Randos conversation. Then it's much more thinky talky. If they are doing, you know, one of the things that I saw about Christian Baxter is Christian made a real effort to not only get into the community, but serve the community. And that might sound weird because serving the community is making a YouTube channel. But if you look at the amount of time that people like Christian and Chad and even Grizz, even though Grizz has these grifts that he runs and it's his basic source of income, you know, Grizz Grizz is not in the market for a private jet at this point. I'll say it that way. So I tend to prioritize people who are showing a real commitment to the larger effort. That having been said, there's a super amount of value just to the pure randos where the link is just out there in Calendly. Anybody can grab it. The problem is, of course, that after I release links, those links are almost always gone within days, if not hours, or even minutes of when I release them. And I usually tend to release them on Monday, but I haven't released them for a while, and then people get frustrated, but I see that as sort of the normal ebb and flow. Sometimes people will ask for a conversation because they're all hot and heavy into the things right now. And then 2-3 months later, they're sort of cool on it because they're off to something else. It's the normal churn. And again, I totally understand that. But some of them I've been coming back to and said, about 6 months ago or a year ago, you wanted to talk to me. Okay, let's have that conversation. And sometimes they're not interested. Sometimes things come about like the home eth conversation that I did this week. And I'm talking to Gavin Ortland on Monday. So other conversations come down the line. And so I'm trying to sort of normalize and figure out how to do this. But what I really love is that Christian, Chad, many others in sort of the corner, the Virtually Not Alone network. I mean, part of the reason that I'm playing this branding and part of the reason I have this, see if I can get my dyslexic brain, this little circle up there in the Virtually Not Alone. Let's see, this thing right here is because I want to. And Father Eric said something a while ago when he said, yeah, the TLC dies the day Paul Vanderklay stops making videos. And there's a degree of truth to that. And I don't want that. And so I very much want to support people doing different things. And so, even making my own branding or using some of Grim Grizz's branding and doing all of this, this is all a way of having this not be the Paul Vanderklay show and having this not be the Paul Vanderklay corner and having this not be everything on Paul Vanderklay. Not that I don't like the attention, not that there isn't other perks don't flow with it, but because I think thinking together, working together, building a community is worth way more than whatever grift Paul Vanderklay can get out of it. Because even though I just listened to a little bit of a Jonathan Haidt video about, and again, he's going off about what he does usually with the social media, and all that is true, and I agree with it all. Yet, I'm not going to let the good be. I'm not going to let the good be the enemy of the perfect. And so, part of what I think we've seen is, well, yeah, there's trade-offs with all of this, but we should do it. So again, back to the thread. Let's see where are all my, the way Twitter works is kind of a pain. There's a voyeur, and actually MJ made this comment in a video, and MJ is perhaps one of the more both insightful and annoying commenters, which usually goes together. When Jordan Peterson says you don't know real things until way to go, Cal. You don't know real things until you sort of bump into them, and MJ is like that. I of course, he's one of the more annoying commenters, but I read his comments and I think about them, and he usually has some degree of truth to them, and so I try to take that. And as I mentioned, I don't think the this movie Vengeance in 2022 by BJ Novak, which in many ways is all about Virtually Not Alone via podcasting. And it's all about sort of this prurient voyeuristic aspect to podcasting and telling stories and sharing stories, and that is in the Randos conversation too. But the thing is, in terms of us, there's always these edges, and you have to work through them. And so there's always danger with these Randos conversations of oversharing or over disclosure. And just recently, a relatively, I took down, and of course, most people will never notice when I take things down. And I never take them down for my own reasons. I usually take them down because there's some other disclosure that it's not a bad disclosure. It's just, it shouldn't be on the open web right now. And it's usually the person comes back to me later, a year or two after, and say, hey, I'm looking for a job, or hey, I've started something and I don't really want just my story up there on the internet. And I happily take it down. Now, happily, part of me is a little sad. Another part of me knows that most people won't. That back catalog is not well watched. Something like 90% of the views of any YouTube video, generally speaking, come within the first 48 hours and definitely within the first week of that video. And as I watch analytics, I can see that that's the case. So most of the Randos back catalog is ignored. And even the conversation that I posted this morning with Moral on TV, who's the Twitch streamer, that only has 400 or 500 views. And so there's sort of a natural, I'm going to use this word guardedly, there's sort of a natural retardation to the analytics in Randos conversations. Most people won't click on to watch a Randos conversation, except for the really hardcore people here. Now, yesterday I started making a video about the guy who developed Patreon. Has a really interesting video in South by Southwest that one of you sent to me. I might make a video on it, but he talks about true fans and talks about Patreon and all of this, talks about community. I think that's 70% right, but I want to play in the 30% that's wrong. So the Randos conversations have changed. And another part of the reason that they've changed is because we're not in the same moment we were in 2018 and 2019. In 2018 and 2019, 2017, 2016, people were discovering Jordan Peterson. They were watching his videos. In many ways, they were being exorcised from the spirit of nihilistic depression. And so when they would come on, their freedom was raw, and there was a power to those conversations. We're not in the same place anymore. And so there isn't the same rawness to those conversations. They're not the same transparency, the same openness. It's these things mature. It's sort of like when you first become a Christian. Yeah, that's right. The algo is watching what we watch, and they share between us. There's when you first become a Christian, you see this all the time with converts. They're just on fire. And there's something really beautiful and powerful about that reality, but it can't last. Nature's first green is gold, her hardest hue to hold. And so there's a maturing and a mellowing and common sense pulling back, because you realize that in those white hot new days of something, it's all there, and it's all amazing, and it's all incredible. But it's also sort of like infatuation. Part of the reason that you are infatuated with someone is you don't see them. You're just projecting on them, and you're projecting so madly. All of your needs and just little bits of their person sort of come together, and you fall head over heels in love. And it actually takes years for a much deeper love to form, where you can actually see them and they can actually see you, and you've got your scars and you've got your wounds, and you figure out, Luke, there's a real hotness to you, Luke. There really is a real hotness to you. That's right. Yeah, we're paying the indulgences. Maybe I'll have to rename this the Indulgence Podcast. So yeah, so there's a lot going on. So if you have any comments about the Randos conversations, about how you think they've changed, come in now. and I dropped the link. It's pinned. And if you've got something to say with respect to that, if you can, maybe in the comments, if you can say in all caps, let's say comment, and then I can post that up and talk about it if you don't want to actually come in the stream. But if you want to come in the stream and talk about the Randos conversations coming now, and if there's not a lot of take on this, then I'm going to move on to the next topic. And what I've done is I've created all these little banners for the different topics that I talk on it. And so again, I'm continuing to sort of, for me, YouTube and social media in general is for play. That's what it really is for. It's for play. So ducks eat bread.
They do. They like it.
They like it. Ducks eat bread. So I don't see anybody coming in. Any other comments about the Randos comment? Good. I'm a curmudgeon who hates change. Yeah, Phlebas made a comment in the Twitter. He says, I'm always slightly annoyed when PVK talks to people with even a small amount of status. The vibe has changed a bit. And that's true. That's exactly right. And that's when everything was new. So we got a couple of guys, and here we have one of the original Randos, Chad the alcoholic. What do you say about the Randos conversations, Chad?
I love them. I just loved all the different things. Even like, so the Randos that your dude did with the Twitch guy, that was still a Randos to me, you know. And so even though you're ratcheting up a little bit on the, as far as like maybe so-called status, but let's face it, nobody knows who these people are.
Yeah.
They're still Randos. So I love that you're taking that pattern up, because I think that's how it, listen, the way that I see this is, and this is why I've been going out to these different spots, I'm trying to kind of mess with algo a little bit. I want other people to find us, people who may need what we're talking about, you know, like who may need that. And I don't mean to be presumptuous or egotistical about that, because I didn't know I needed this until I found it. So but what I would say too is, if who is this child? Is that Job's child?
Job.
Yeah, there's two of them. Sorry,
I thought you were talking to one behind the two babies.
Job
Beautiful.
is the original Rando.
Yeah, this is all your fault, Paul. I wouldn't tell me I would lose this much sleep. I'm so tired.
I wouldn't be doing any of this stuff if it wasn't really for Job and Paul's conversations, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah. So Chad, why did you start doing Randos conversations? Because you will basically want to go out and forage more?
Touch that.
Well, yeah, so going out into the flotillas, that is trying to bring other people in. Maybe Algo will push us out to them, whatever. But the reason why I do Randos conversations on my channel is because I really love listening to people's stories. Yeah. They're just so much better than anything else.
They are. They really are.
Yeah.
And it's a. Go ahead.
I'm really hoping that more people just email me at chadthealcoholic@gmail, and I'll get you in there. It's just going to take a while. That's all, because they fill it up pretty quick. I had to take Wednesday off on my birthday. I'm sorry. Okay. But that's when I do all the filming is on Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Central.
Okay. I feel your pain, Chad. I feel your pain. All right, Dale, what say you?
Oh, I've been watching. I probably watched 90% of your Randos conversations since you began. It's just fun listening to people's stories. I think it's the same reason you do them. It's just fun listening to stories.
Yeah.
The ones that stick out in the mind is the one guy who went through multiple cults type stuff during his life. That was like, whoa, there's somebody I've never met before.
Nick, yeah.
That was wild.
He lives up in Washington State now. I bumped into him up there. He came to an event, and it was so good to talk to him. I really have to, now that I'm getting a little bit better organized, I really have to reach out to some of these old time Randos and do some new updates. But this is all part of me trying to deal with the crazy life that I live. So
Wedge new randos like me in there occasionally if you could.
all right, that sounds good. Dale.
And by the
Alan,
way,
you were go ahead.
how old is Job?
What's that?
How old is Job?
I am 41.
41. So you had started a family late too, I see. So
Yeah, we didn't expect to have kids anymore. That kind of showed up unexpected still. And then there was another one. So
It's beautiful.
it's all good. It's pretty great at times.
It's hard, but there's no better way. Alan,
Yeah.
what say you?
Yeah. Hey, can you hear me?
I hear you.
Great. Yeah, I mean, I'm very passionately on the pro Randos Convo side. I think, I mean, even just as a way of showing people how to behave. And I mean, so many of the most powerful teaching devices are people just acting it out. And I think that the way, you know, people say, oh, we're so nice to each other here in the corner. It's like, well, we're not made up of special people. We're made up of people who are learning how to treat each other. And so, yeah, it might not get the most views or clicks or comments, but I think the modeling Rando's behavior is the best way to, you know, exercise the demons of like the worst parts of the internet, which is to hate and to assume the worst and to treat other people like they're not human. So I'm very, very pro Randos.
All right, Job, do you have anything definitive to say, as you are in many ways the quintessential Rando?
I missed the original question.
Well, so Phil Nickerson, he made a splash with me because he decided he was going to watch all of the Randos conversations. So he went through the playlist, and he testifies that this was actually a big part of his coming back to the church and to the faith, is watching all of those Randos conversations. And so when he asked the question on Twitter, have the Randos conversations changed? Are they less personal and more thinky-talky over the last few years?
It really depends on the dynamic between the both people. I mean, it tends to be two. Sometimes there have been three. There have been conversations that have been more thinky-talky, and some of them, I mean, what was that person you had on recently? Food Truck Emily?
Yeah.
That was thinky-talky, but also personal in there.
Yeah.
I mean, the problem with having two kids is you don't get to watch so many Randos conversations. Hey, Jacob. So again, I think when I see a new Rando conversation pop up, I always kind of want to watch it, because like, especially if there's a little teaser, like you're really gaming that system, PVK. We all know it. But
I'm trying to do teasers because otherwise people don't watch them. And I hear from people, they say, if you don't do a clip, I don't watch it because I don't know why I should watch it. And that's fair.
But that's also something of the, it's fair. I get that, but it's also a bit of the charm. Like you're ready to just go, what's that? You don't know this person. You haven't seen a teaser. This might be really boring. You don't know.
Yeah.
Sorry, what is it? Is the fire truck leaving? And my kid's talking to me in Dutch. I'm responding in English. It's a dysfunctional family. It's but anyway, so to answer your question, I don't think they've changed. I think they were always really different depending on the person. I mean, I'm glad you're still doing them, honestly, and I'm glad there are still many requests. I mean, like I heard Lucas, he said Lucas is having had a Rando conversation with you. I'm really curious to hear that one. I mean, I've met Lucas a couple of times, so have you, and there's still lots more that I don't know. I mean, I'm repeating myself, but you just never know what you're gonna get. It's kind of Forrest Gumpy that way.
Yeah, and so with Lucas, he basically had done sort of a Randos conversation with Karen Wong, and so I didn't do that with him. And so part of it too is, so like right now in the chat, people are, you know, they're oh, we want to see this person, we want to see that person, and then they're not really a pure Randos conversation because they're already a known thing in the corner. So then so this stuff is just always changing. And it's just.
So that's actually what I came on to talk about. But I guess, I mean, Sam, if you want to take all my thunder, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I am in favor of a semi-frequent amount of high-status conversations for you, Paul, or medium high status, like whatever local distance or Gavin Ortland would count as high status. And I think that they add something, and they are sort of a way of branching out to other flotillas that are out there. And not every first conversation needs to be perfect, and that's okay. I know you like to have relationship with people, but relationships can't start from nothing, right? You can't have a relationship without starting at a point of having nothing.
Yep.
So don't let perfection and relationship be the enemy of starting somewhere. Okay.
I just want to beat on the same drum I've been beating on since the very first beginning, which is Jethro. It's the reason I started doing the Just Chattings is because what Chad is doing is what needs to be happening with the Randos, which is...
And Christian. A lot of people are doing it.
Well, I'm glad. I mean, there's a reason I opened up my StreamYard account to so many people, right? And frankly, what also needs to happen is partly what I've been doing, which is I have more conversations off my channel than I have on my channel. And that is a huge part of actually making community is you need to be talking to people and keeping up, maintaining the relationships. You know, every time someone leaves my server, I check why they left the server. Some of them, it's because their family, right? And they're going to be more offline. Hey, Exodus off my server for Lent, A+. You're deconstructing. Maybe you need to have a private conversation with me. So goes back to Jethro. I hope when I say Jethro, it's clear enough to everyone what I'm talking about. I am afraid that it's not.
I watched the Beverly Hillbillies. I know all about Jethro Bodine. Luke, what say you?
Yeah, I love the Randos. I think what Jacob just said is excellent. I was just talking to somebody this morning about the value, or they were saying to me the value of having off-screen, unrecorded conversations, because I think that's a huge part of the dojo of the corner. You know, is developing friendships, developing trust, relationship, and you know, not everybody can just jump onto a Just Chatting or just jump onto a screen and have a public conversation where you can be vulnerable and transparent. Because the whole corner thing is weird. I had a Orthodox men's gathering last night, and I have this guy in there who I'm really good friends with, he's starting to get into Peugeot, and I'm talking to him about the corner, and it's just hard to communicate what it is to somebody who hasn't been participating in it. Because it's, I don't know, it's a weird thing. Like, it's even like Chad says, it's different than other flotillas. It is based in the Randos, and I think it's really, the difference is it's really person-centric with ideas and intellectual conversation attached. But it's really about people.
Yeah. Good.
If I could just jump in here for a second.
You have a question.
Yeah. We'll leave him for later. He's not a true rando. But to Luke's point, like, I went to the Jordan Peterson thing. He spoke in New York City, not the thing. He spoke in New York City, and I went. And someone that I met at Chino introduced me to someone he met at the Symbolic World Conference. And we never met in person, but he texted me out of the blue, "Hey, do you happen to be at the Peterson thing?" And I also was with a friend who I only know through church, not through online. And we all know Pajot. So we were just talking. And it wound up being like literally we had never met before, me and this guy that I was introduced to. And the point just being of like, yes, it's hard to explain. 100%, I struggle with it all the time. But like, I'm starting to see like, oh, my friend who has no idea what the corner is talked to this guy who was only introduced to me through someone I met at Chino. And the guy he's introducing me to doesn't really know PVK, but knows Peugeot. And my friend who doesn't know also knows PVK, who I only know through physical church. Like, I'm not saying it's perfect, but you can start to like tessellate. You can start to like get the constellations of like, oh, these same patterns, and then the guy who I'd introduced to, I'd never spoken to before, just by talking to him, I'm like, oh, I think you'd actually, and I didn't do this just to proselytize, but I'm like, I think you'd actually really like my church, and just come to like a book club night or I do a movie night at church, where I secretly slip in Peugeotian symbols. Don't tell anybody in the group, but I agree, and it really, really is tough. But like now, it feels like it's getting more real, because like what a weird thing. Literally, this guy I've never met before in my life, only Corey introduced me to, texts me, "Oh, are you at the Peterson thing?" I say yes. I'm with a friend who also knows Peugeot, and like then it just, and no, even outside of all that, good things can come from it. But then you try and reverse explain, like, oh, well, why did this relationship come together? Why is this good thing happening? It's like, well, we happened to be in the same place, and I had his number, and he knew, and my friend happened to show up at the same time, and it's going to be hyper complex to explain all those, and I only, there's so many like things that had to come together for that to happen. So I know that was long, but like it just felt like a real, like, oh, instantiate, like it's coming together, the thing is happening, like, this friend who doesn't know PVK, this person I've never met in person, this person who just knows symbolism but doesn't know this, they're all talking, they're all coming together, intersection with real in-person church, etc. So yeah,
Kairos moments,
yeah.
Any last thoughts on this topic? Because then I'm going to move on to the first video of the week, which were the first video on the list, which were the gender pioneers. And Ross Douthat's piece on does the left have sexual boundaries? And so I'm going to jump into that. I haven't decided if I should clear you all out here and have new come in, or is that what I should do?
I think so.
Depends if there are people lurking behind the scenes or not.
There aren't any that are.
You can clear us all out and then let us back in just to give a visual sign that we've changed subjects.
All right, I'll do that. Any last things on the randos? All right. Clearing you out. Trying to figure out. So I got my banner. My next banner. Does the left have sexual boundaries? Why not? And I don't know if any of you saw that video with that this arose out of a different forum that I participate in. And in that forum, it's not too hard to guess what forum it was, but there's just this ongoing fierce battle over same-sex marriage. And one of the questions was, does the left have sexual boundaries? And someone then in that forum, and he gave permission to let people go out of the forum to talk about this from his thread, he said, go and find your 5. This was a person that's on the left of the debate in this group. Go and find your 5 most liberal friends and ask them, beyond consenting adults, they didn't even say consenting adults, they just said consent. Beyond consent, are there such things as immoral acts? And what was interesting is that some people did try this, and a lot of people said, well, when I asked the question, people looked at me like it was a trap. And so that got into my mind the idea that there's something in sort of this liberationist ethos that says, you can't have boundaries. And actually, there was a video that that Malcolm and Simone over on Basecamp had done about this topic, which I really want to come back to and watch and do a little work on and maybe talk to them about sometime, because I think people are onto something when they're noticing that liberationism has to imagine wide open frontiers, and any kind of what feels like a priori boundary is therefore illegitimate. So then it led me to the thought, well, then and then Ross Douthat's point where he said, there was Me Too, but basically, and then there's all this fascination with polyamory and all of these things. And he said, but what you get from people who have gone out into that world and come back from it are usually horror stories. And, which is, so then I thought about the 19th century and these mountain men. But of course, Douthat was responding to Andrew Huberman's, the write-up about him. And, okay, men aren't supposed to do this because if men do this, they'll surely do it wrong because they're men. So women should do this. But, and then I thought, well, how do regular people who are living this way, how do they do their pioneering? And I thought, oh, it's authenticity, because I hear that all the time. Well, I would go and do that, but it doesn't feel real to me. It doesn't feel right to me. And so I thought, so that was so I had written this on this forum, and actually a lot of the people to the left of that debate on the forum, they're a little suspicious of it, because for some people in the Christian Reformed Church, I am a traitor, because I used to be a reliable lefty, and now suddenly I am a traitor to the cause. And so there's people that are a little annoyed by me and don't trust me because I haven't, especially when I got a YouTube channel, because I should use my channel to promote what they want promoted, and I won't. And but I, at the same time, I'm trying to get a sense of what are the dynamics in this. And so I thought, yeah, it's this whole thing about progressivism and authenticity that sort of come together, and what it's left people with is a lot of trauma. At the same time, that doesn't sort of leave the right off the hook or the traditionalists off the hook, because almost everyone who was sort of let out for the territory used to be in the traditional camp, and there were issues. And so there's a reason they decided to go out and explore. And so, yeah. So that's the topic. And so if anybody wants to jump in here and talk about that, I've got two remainders in the, and the fact that they remained will surprise none of us, or that both of them have opinions on this topic probably will surprise none of us. But I don't know if you guys watched the video or if the summary was enough, but what are your thoughts?
I think that sort of like that parasitic storytelling idea, where the left constantly, when it wants to tell a story, has to first set up the old regime to tear it down, right? That's sort of Peugeot's point, is that even when the left is completely in charge, they need their boogeyman around. Yep. And if the boogeyman isn't stepping up to the plate, then they'll construct a straw man boogeyman for their purposes. I think that the left views themselves as not just wanting to explore, but needing sort of a rival to contend with. And now that the left has virtually uncontested triumph over seemingly the sexual conversation for the moment, although I suspect that will change relatively soon, relatively quickly, they are left wondering what to do, and they're tearing down these boundaries, and the fruits of their labors are coming back at them in the form of detransitioners or whatever. And that it's starting to look pretty ugly. And I think really kind of what they need, like, it is probably for the best that there's someone questioning the status quo at any given time. But it is not the left's job to be the maintainer of the status quo. And they're kind of left with that bill at the moment, and they don't know what to do, and they're terrible at that job. And now all of a sudden they look like prudes every once in a while, which is their least favorite thing. The least favorite thing is to look like a prude, right? And so I don't know. I think they need to give the task back to the conservatives, realize that the conservatives have a job and a role, and it has a purpose, and they have a purpose. And so things are just upside down and weird at the moment.
All right. Jacob. You're muted.
This is a very immature and incomplete conversation that is really important. And like, I kind of feel like your video "Sex Lives of the Patriarchs" is like foundational, and so like, frankly, I didn't stick around to make a comment on this because like I don't know if you watched the discussion I had with Cale Zeldin on Abigail Schreier's book.
No, I haven't yet.
No,
where he mentioned your video. This topic is just so huge. There just hasn't been enough processing for us to like do a simple analysis.
Okay. All right. Good. Chad.
Hi. Well, my intuition about I'm going to talk about this kind of adjacently. Like, I would say if you're going to ask this question or do this experiment, do not do it at work, because I ended up having this, and I'm serious. I ended up. This was back in 2020. I was working with a couple people. One of them was a male. The other was a female. We were talking about she was at some protest rally about have you ever heard of communism or the Soviet Union and this and that. And then she started talking about Billie Eilish and what the press was doing to Billie Eilish, because they're sexualizing her because she was wearing like a bra and stuff. And I was just like, well, I mean, it just seems like if you wear a bra on stage, of course you're going to.
Oh, you mean she was just wearing a bra? I mean, because in the 60s it was the other way around. Up.
And then I ended up getting called into the office for sexual harassment on that.
Oh, yeah. No, dude, that's right.
And let me tell you, that is not a fun thing to have to tell your wife, that you just got called into the office for sexual harassment. And I had to sign a paper that said I was re-educated.
Well, yep.
And it was it was terrible. But that was all just like having a conversation that had nothing to do with sex, really. And that was very terrible. So if you're going to have...
You're breaking up, Chad. I'm going to move on to the other Jacob. Chamomile TV just had a recent conversation
with people that you work with, so that you don't get called into the office for such things. Because if they don't like doing the...
Oh, all right.
Lots of good stuff there in fragments. We will study it like the lost scrolls of ancient Greek civilization. And
so what's your take on it? Did you see the video?
Didn't see the video. I just liked the topic, so I jumped on. I figured our standards weren't like super high here, that I needed to do a lot of background research. I hope that's the case.
Jacob's standards are very high, so when Jacob's here, he elevates the standards.
Okay, I'll try to not fail to live up to them too badly. What we're talking about, like sexual authenticity, and
why does the left struggle to have sexual boundaries that are sort of a priori?
Why does the left struggle to have sexual boundaries that are a priori?
Meaning doing this is wrong.
Paul, this is Jordan Peterson's whole thing. The left struggles with boundaries. Yeah. Like, he hammers on that constantly. So it's nothing new.
I could get a little thinky talky here, which is, I think, like leftism is the autocatalytic process of self-digestion of Western culture. It's like what happens when you get something that exists and it starts to digest itself. And like any any vector along which you can make progress or you can change things is the direction where you get rewarded for making progress. So you sort of are just taking advantage of any weakness in your culture's foundation to see if you can try something new and have people pay attention to you for it. Like, I think Robin DiAngelo's book about like white fragility is like bad for the world, but she wrote it because she got paid to write it and like lots of status for writing it. And the same thing within the realms of sexual experimentation. Anything, if you can make something that works and gets popular, why not? Something like that.
All right. Andrew, I'm not going to let you just eat breakfast here on the live stream. If you have something to say, you have to say it. I know Jacob is here, and so you're used to just eating breakfast with Jacob, but that's not what this channel's for. Jacob has a channel that you can eat breakfast with him. What do you have to say, Andrew? Do you have anything to say? You got to unmute first, too, by the way.
You know, I kind of just came on here not knowing what the topic is.
Really? I'm so surprised.
We're talking about sexual ethic or something. I don't know, man.
Well, I've got some. I think
it's like
Elder Jacob.
It's like innately there's something exciting about the idea that there's no rules, and I think everybody wants to try that out until they run into like until it stops working. And like that's when people get religion or like try to shape up, you know. And some people never do or do too late. I was 35 when I realized that like, you know, the way I was living was never going to result in the love and deep connection that I wanted someday.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait a second. I'm 35 now. I'm like, oh, I want to settle down and be married and have a family like someday. But I'm 35 and I just broke up with someone after 3 years. When's someday going to happen?
Yeah.
And it's like, if someday's not now, someday might not. I'm starting to run out of some days.
Yeah.
And then I just tweeted today about I met a girl at a local church and her boyfriend broke up with her because he said he's not sure what he wants out of life. And he's 43.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, you better hurry up. It's like, you know, you're going to die soon. I mean,
yeah.
You're 43. Like, you better figure out what you want out of life. And yeah, so I think when the fire starts to burn, that's when we take our hand out of it. And it's just some of us have higher pain tolerances than others.
Nate Heil is going crazy, and Nate, he might be at work and not be able to come in and defend, because I'd love to get the other side, and we're not going to get it from Hank. That much I know. Hank, what do you have to say?
Well, I've come to lower the standards.
Oh, sure.
If Jacob has raised the standards, I have come to lower them. Standards? What are those? I did watch it. I think that the hedonism of the 70s was commonly called the me generation. And we were the first generation that parents were divorcing. And it had a profound effect. And part of that profound effect was objectification, right? You know, now a woman is an object of my desires and no longer a person. And it's had a horrible effect on our society. And I think that, you know, I grew up in a generation where I remember my father looking at me when I went out on a date with a young lady and said, if you do not treat her like a lady and something happens, you don't have to worry about her father. Okay. But he came from a generation, right, that was a little different.
Yeah.
And I think that when we talk about it, I was a late bloomer. I didn't get married till I was 30. For my generation, that was late.
Yeah.
And a thing you learn in marriage is it's all like playing jazz. There's no written outline of how you're going to go about this thing.
And so when you think you got a plan, there is no plan. Okay? God has a nasty habit of taking your plans and laughing at you. And I think that the most important thing is that it's about a commitment. Do you just make a commitment? And I think that you talk to my friends who never made the commitment or didn't make it properly, they're very unhappy. And happiness doesn't mean perfection. It doesn't mean that each day is a dream. And there's times where I know my wife probably every other day wonders why she married me. And I sort of wonder why she married me too. But I think that this idea that the grass is greener, that the sex will be better, that's the physicality, and it's all like just, there's a time where you got to get out on the basketball court and shoot, and the guy may throw the ball back at your face, but you know what? You get up and you shoot again, and you just keep on going.
Yep.
And I think that's the best thing, and it's like I think it's worked out well. I think this. I think when we degrade each other, when what you're seeing, that home math that I watched was amazing. You can't degrade one gender over another. I tell you every day I go home and I tell Kate how much I love her, how much she means to me. If she were to die, I probably would be devastated for a long, long time. We've built a life together.
Yeah.
We're so you can't separate it out. And I tell you what, the wonder of that, now that I've gone through it for 35 years, I wouldn't trade my position for all the money that you could give me, or all the fame, or all the wealth, or anything else. It's a blessing.
All right. From Hank, I got two more voices.
So did I raise or lower the standards, Paul?
Well, you said pretty much exactly what I thought you were going to say. So, but not everybody else would know.
Paul,
yeah, go ahead, Jacob.
Just quickly, two things to be paying attention to, which I don't think people are paying enough attention to. The Cass report in England and what's going on with J.K. Rowling, it's really important stuff that's going to change the contours of this conversation.
The Cass report?
Yes. So the National Health Service commissioned a pediatrician to do an independent report on what's going on with trans-identified kids, and that report just came out. It took 4 years to put it together, and it's causing a huge sea change in how things are going to be done.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Jacob. Mark.
Hi, Paul. Yeah.
How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Doing well, thank you. Yeah. I guess the topic that fascinates me, which is maybe connected to this, is the influence of 4chan and Tumblr on the sexual ethic. And what was sort of working within those two social media platforms. So 4chan was very quickly pornified, and so was Tumblr very, very quickly pornified.
Huh.
And the impact then that had on the young people within those platforms. So 4chan, there's quite a lot about 4chan. Tumblr was mentioned in the J.K. Rowling, Witch Trials of J.K. Rowling podcast.
Yeah.
And then Louise Perry had a conversation with the lady Helen, I can't remember her second name, who wrote the book about trans in relation to fan fiction on Tumblr. And I'm no expert, but just looking at it, what people were able to do within those platforms was that push the boundaries of the sexual ethic in a virtual setting.
Yeah.
And sort of explore things. Also, there was probably bad actors within those platforms feeding junk in.
Yeah.
And influence a lot of young people in an early stage of the formation. So, like, a good example of how that kind of explodes out into the real world is Twilight, where there was a piece of fan fiction that was done with Twilight, and it was a bit like I guess BDSM, and then that piece of fan fiction was taken and published as 50 Shades of Grey, and then that explodes out from fan fiction into the real world. So that's just one tiny example. And then these communities, like the fan fiction communities on Tumblr, and what was going on in 4chan, what it enables people to kind of formulate ideas in their mind, and then potentially take those ideas from that platform and then take them into the real world. So it'd be interesting to sort of understand the impact of those two platforms. Like, this is maybe very general. Like, my understanding of 4chan, it moved to the right from being like it's just an open platform, and then Tumblr moved to the left. But in a bad way, they both pornified a certain generation, I think, and just the impact of that, and just the fact that nobody twigged onto that to regulate that as well, and pull those in. I think that's had, my gut tells me no scientific data, but your gut would tell you those platforms have had untold damage on young people.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
Dale.
Yeah.
What say you?
I think one of the issues that they don't have many boundaries is nothing but sort of the definition of the left today versus conservatism, is that they don't have any background to make reference to of what's allowed for everybody and what's not. In other words, they're trying to think of today without a background, what are the boundaries? So that if you also ask them to break it down, what do you think is acceptable for yourself? What do you think is acceptable law? And what do you think is acceptable for other people? You'll come up with 3 different answers.
Yeah. Well, I think, and this, libertarians used to be sort of considered conservatives, but sort of this libertarian ethos and impulse has kind of pervaded everything. And so that's where I get into this authenticity compass. Because when I talk to people, normal people, not in the corner, not on YouTube, when I talk to people, what people tend to say is, it has to feel authentic to me. And I think, this is after 100 years of psychology and sociology, where it's been fundamentally materialistic, where a psychologist would say, well, you are the product of all of your past experiences, and your authenticity spectrum is simply the sum total of this. Now, again, this is not a Christian position necessarily. But what's amazing is that this religious cult of the secret sacred self reemerged in this. And so I'm going to go out and I'm going to go frontiering with my authenticity thing. And I think that gets back to what you were saying, Jacob Chamomile, that you, part of what we lost in the culture were the idea that fences and boundaries are given to the youth to give them at least a place to start. And we know that sometimes things don't always work out well, but at least you've got a better than nothing thing. And sort of what we've done with authenticity is we've said, well, just go out and do what feels right to you. Do what feels right to you is not a great standard. So
yeah, I think there's, if I may, you're the moderator, Paul. Okay. I think there's sort of a lie about the kind of thing we are that's implicit in like libertarian hedonism, like the dominant libertarian hedonism that you see on like Reddit, Tumblr, 4chan, all these other places that have had a huge effect on like the wider culture as well, which is something like you are your appetites. Like we become identified with our appetites. So we treat sexuality as like a tasting menu where you go and you try out every kind of thing, either in fantasy or in real life that you think you might want. And then if I like something, then that becomes my identity. That's who I am. And it's like I went to a restaurant with a big tasting menu and I tried out, I don't know, chocolate ice cream, vanilla ice cream, strawberry ice cream, praline ice cream, and I decided that like whatever I like best, that's who I am. And then I need to reformulate my entire life around that. And then but then like on the internet there's like all this weird porn that's not even like realistic. Like there's some men that decide that their identity and who they want to be is like they have a fantasy about having sex with giant women like over 15 feet tall or something, This is like a mild one, right? This is just like,
that sounds like a nightmare.
well, this is like one kind of thing that exists, and but it doesn't exist, right? It's like not real, or there's men that like, I'm sorry to get you. I know the whole. I've been on 4chan. I've been in pride parades. I've been around the block, so I know these things. There's men that like only can get excited to images of women that are like made out of green slime. Like their thing is like slime women, and like this doesn't even exist, right? You can't marry a slime woman, but this is what they've come to become warped as. And like, is this who you are? Is this authenticity, or is there like a deeper level of authenticity that respects reality, that respects your connection to other people, and you're embedding in a culture and a civilization, and to like some sort of like productive way of being that stretches into the future and connects to the past? Because your ancestors, didn't have fantasies of 15-foot tall women, and that's all, like, or
maybe they did, and they just didn't reproduce because they couldn't find any.
So there's a 4chan green text meme that I think deconstructs it well, which says, before the internet, I want to have sex with toasters. Friend tells you you're an idiot, you move on. After the internet, I want to have sex with toasters. You find a community of 1,000 people that want to have sex with toasters. You become a sex with toasters guy, and you go to sex with toasters conventions. But like that appetite has been completely warped from its original purpose. Is that who you authentically are?
It's a good point. All right, Luke.
I want to just say something quick. Paul, I love you. I love you. So your secret sacred self stuff drives me insane.
Okay, but that's different from your White Stone name.
Yeah, integration. When you hear authenticity, just hear integration. Unity of the multiplicity. Your I is one. I think that's the best. That's the way to steel man authenticity. Because the kind of authenticity that's the hedonistic, libertarian freedom without constraint is insanity. That's the freedom that's not freedom. People that say authenticity that way are authenticity bullshitters. Like that's all fake.
All right.
As far as I'm concerned.
There's Luke. Now Jess.
I just want to say that the boundaries is what makes sex sexy. If you don't have the boundaries, then there's no excitement, and that's what. So when you have the libertarian freedom and you don't have the boundaries anymore, people start getting bored, and then they have to invent slime women and all that. And then I think the thing with authenticity that people to try to tie that in is that if something inside of you is so authentic that you have to cross a boundary in order to like act it out or be yourself, then that must be like yourself is more real than the boundary. And so they want to exert this it's not always self-importance, but sometimes it'll come out self-importance or pride or whatever, but it could also just be like, I just want to be real, but like, I want to be an actual person and not just someone, you hear them talk in these terms that's confined in a box or whatever. So by transgressing, it sort of proves a point that I'm real and I have like this thing inside of me.
Yeah. I think you're right in that. Luke and I need to have a whole separate conversation on why he hates the secret sacred self, which is what I talk about. But I think I think you're right here, because the transgression helps make the secret sacred self feel real. Because the key about the secret sacred self, it has to feel enough other from me that there's a boundary that I cross, a transformation that is done to me so that I feel like I am evolving into the truth. So I think there's some interesting dynamics in that. All right. Anything else on this topic before we get to Jordan Peterson and Daniel Dennett?
I hopped on again because I had a thought.
Did you want to apologize for the 15-foot women and the toaster sex?
I tried.
The toaster sex is the one that the 15-foot one. That's just weird. The slime, that's just weird. But toasters, like, I know what toasters are like. Who would think this?
That I think that one was a meme making fun of like all the weird sex stuff that was like more common.
Please don't tell me that there are people out there.
But there's people that can only have sex wearing like fursuits, right? Like that's just common, like furries, right?
It's not that common because I haven't bumped into it in the wild. But now again, my sample would be small, and part of the difficulty with the internet. So I just talked to someone who was telling me that his son, who goes to a public school, he's known to be a Christian, and so what people will do is that they'll take a phone and they will, put some kind of really transgressive porn on it and just like put it in front of his face to show him. And so then he was telling me the kind of stuff he gets showed. It's like, I've never dreamed of most of these things, and I would rather live my life never having had the thing appear before me. So I'm not blaming you, Jacob, but that's an issue that we have going, that the internet and this sort of transgressionism, we just need to continually be shocked by another transgression. And the further out that those transgressive boundaries go, the more awful it gets and the more satanic it gets. But
it's an interesting one, Paul. Just last week, I think on Netflix, there was a series called The Antisocial Network. So it focuses on 4chan. It's light touch, but it plots 4chan from its beginnings right to I think almost the present day. But what you're describing is basically what they said in the documentary. There was this awful stuff going on 4chan, but it was confined to a certain extent. Nobody knew what 4chan was. But basically what's happened in the last 10 years since 4chan started is all that awfulness in 4chan has exploded out into the real world. And basically one of the conclusions of the documentary was that 4chanified the world. Just the awfulness that was going on in there, just as you described, people just in a school showing awful images. It's about an hour and a half. It's probably worth a watch, and just the impact that 4chan has had.
Yeah, that's a game they used to play on B, which is like try to see who can gross out everybody else with the grossest image. But like part of the reason why the thought I had was actually about so Mr. Beast is this very popular YouTuber, and he has one of his buddies that works and does videos with him. He got married, he had a kid. He's probably like 26, 27 years old. And then he came out as trans when his kid was 3 months old or something. And people were going through his Twitter and his old tweets, and they're like, "Oh, this guy was into a lot of weird porn." And he was into a lot of anime porn, hentai, which has a lot of the weirder tropes. To me, it looks like when someone comes out as trans in their mid-20s, like a lot of times it's through this rabbit hole of weird porn that they fall down. And this has a real effect on the world. Like, where is this coming from with all these gender wars and people, experimenting with their gender identity and their sexuality, and it creates an inability to have a relationship too, because a real human woman, usually it's the men who are more pornified, not always, but a real human woman is never the same thing as you've been as an anime girl or as these other images that you've been exposed to as you go down a weird rabbit hole. So it becomes, it's actually a very isolating thing to fall down one of these authenticity holes, let's call them.
No, that's good. An authenticity hole. That's good. I mean, the thing that continues to boggle my mind is that after 100 years of naturalism, we are now surprised that human beings are formed by their experience. We had 100 years of a religion that says human beings are simply the sum of their genetics and experience. And now we are shocked that giving people enormous amounts of transgressive experience leads to destruction. It's like, this would be the one thing that religion should at least give to us, that we should be careful about how we form people. But the opposite has happened. I mean, it's a completely insane thing when you understand what's at the heart of that religion.
Yet nobody that's ever believed in the complete malleability of human nature has had then a positive program for where to lead that. I agree with that. Soviets, their new Soviet man was one that had no scruples that would kill, on command and things like that. Like that's who they chose to make.
Alan says this is a constant topic of conversation in the corner, and this could be a topic of an entire thing, and the topic between the men and the women of the corner is very interesting. And I, as sort of a marquee member of the corner, often get very interesting comments from a range of women with respect to this, and I'd love at some point to host a conversation of women on this topic. But part of it is here that I think the same point that Jess was making, that and it connects to the Randos conversation, that there's something very there's some things we do in this corner are just a little too disclosing for a lot of women, and understandably so. And so figuring out how to navigate all those things, and also just it's also legitimate to have a male only space. Now, this isn't a male only space, but it tends to be a male dominated space, so it's hard to know. So
yeah. Paul, I'll say goodbye. Thanks for the time. Yep.
All right, Mark, it's great to see you again.
Yeah, take care. Cheers now.
All right, on to the next topic. This should be an interesting one. The Jordan Peterson, Daniel Dennett conversation. Now, I have done now 2 videos on that, and I was this morning, I was watching the Daily Wire exclusive portion, which was lovely. It was really nice to get to know Daniel Dennett, and it made me think about Rando's conversations. And thank you, Mandy. Thank you for commenting on that. That's helpful input. To me, again, we are just seeing, there were a lot of interesting comments in the second video. Like, when I knew that for both of those videos, I knew that the titles would draw fire. But the fact is, and then a lot of people in the second video were sort of doubting the premise of the title, which is, but if you watch that video, Daniel Dennett starts, no, it's science all the way down. And then Peterson just sort of patiently keeps bringing things. No, it's civilization. You need civilization as a boundary. Oh, and then China. Okay, you need law. And it just, it was a surprising video. It was a surprising conversation. I think it shows how far the discourse has evolved. Watching Alex O'Connor regularly has showed how far this has changed. Glenn Scrivener did an excellent video on Alex O'Connor's appearance on Trigonometry recently, where Alex O'Connor sort of almost takes the theistic chair versus Konstantin Kisin, who is playing all of the authenticity cards. The real surprise to me in that video was, and I didn't have time to make it because I'm doing all these other conversations. The real surprise in that video was Alex O'Connor continues to get more and more sort of a Platonist, maybe sometimes in some moments. And Konstantin Kisin, who's supposedly like a new conservative, so he's with Jordan Peterson on the trail in terms of a bunch of the headers for a bunch of the videos. Konstantin Kisin just exposes himself to be a complete just a expressive individualist. And all right, so if you want to come in and you want to talk about the Bennett Jordan Peterson conversation, I'd love to hear your take. Or you can, I know some people are noting that they thought it was boring, et cetera, et cetera. If you have, so you can include any other recent Jordan Peterson conversations on your commentary. So I've talked a lot about this. I don't know that I have a lot more to say about it because, again, I took the conversation, I sort of chopped it up, and I watched the different segments, and then I thought about the structure of how the conversation progressed, and then I sort of walked it backwards through the conversation. There were some other little interesting elements of it, but I remember my first watch of the conversation was Daniel Dennett sort of gave up the keys to the kingdom and didn't realize he was doing it. So, all right. Well, I got a message in. So yeah, if there nobody wants to come in and talk about that, well, nobody wants to or nobody can. So, Dale's got ideas. Nobody. So what do you think of the conversation, Dale?
Haven't even moved the screen over yet.
Dale's got ideas. Sorry, you got to mute your.
I got you.
Right.
You didn't give me time. It was too quick. Anyway, I watched that video too, and two things really struck me on. One, Jordan was on his sort of best behavior, respectful with Daniel.
Yes.
Okay. He was showing him a lot of deference. So he would throw out the question and then throw out another thing, but he never phrased anything as an argumentation type structure. It was always just a very polite question. The other thing that struck me is that anybody who's been listening to you and Jordan for quite a while could have just waxed the table with him instantly. I mean, he left hole after hole after hole of no foundational axiom support for all his arguments. Those are the two that just really jumped out at me on that video. It was like, man, this is like listening to a bad Sam Harris. So,
yeah. Alan, what do you think?
I only saw your recap of it. I mean, when figures like Dennett get flustered, and you see it all the time, you tweeted you mentioned his comment about, oh, in any civilized society, the trust, obviously we trust each other. Like, I'm not even saying like, oh, there's blood in the water, great way to, let's rip them to shreds. It's like, anytime someone learns the scientific method, be like, okay, you're reading a study. You didn't do the study. You're reading it. You have to trust this other person, even if it's someone commented under one of my comments, oh, well, we have peer review. And they said it in a respectful way. But I'm just like, yeah, that's just more other people. Like, that's just more, you're just adding more layer, which you can say like, oh, the confidence intervals are getting higher and higher. And, and the margins are, but it's just like, you're just adding more people. You didn't do the experiment. So that's just, I don't mean to like, it's just, okay, you did a study, it's peer reviewed. I have X amount of confidence in that. I like this journal. I don't like this journal, blah, blah, blah. But that's just part of the science that really can't fully be captured by the title of science, which is fine. Things are nested in each other. But as someone who's somewhat of a layman on this topic, it just seems so obvious of like, yeah, like there's the scientific method. When I read the study, someone doing an experiment and then telling me about it is not, I didn't do science. I just read a study that someone else did. And I have trust because we have a society that like has high trust and peer review in journals. But it just seems like such a like obvious. And then of course, Dennett's getting like, well, any civilized society. I'm just like, whoa. We're using big words all of a sudden and getting very, high and mighty all of a sudden. But yeah, that's just the point I wanted to jump in and make.
So is 4 years ago, this would have been a big conversation. Today, it's a snoozer. Does that basically show that, at least in many circles, Dennett and the Four Horsemen, they're just done. They're just done.
Yeah,
that's my read. That you watch them and it's like new atheism. It doesn't mean atheism is dead, and it doesn't mean. I mean, one of the big missteps that I see Christians always make is like, we won. It's like, no, it's just that this whole church of science is really looking shabby and has kind of been exposed for what it is. So, Jess, what say you?
I thought it was interesting, like when Peterson would walk through in that very careful way that he would characterize the conversation. But he would walk through something like the myth that undergirded the Egyptian civilization. He goes through that, and then Daniel Dennett's like, yeah, I'd agree with that. But he's like, I don't call that religion. I would call that whatever. And he would just call it something else. And And so there was like this agreement, but Daniel Dennett would never sort of concede the definitional ground of what religion was. It was something that sort of, for Dennett at least, went undefined.
Yeah.
And he just sort of axiomatically was like, that's bad. So obviously, if you explain something to me and it was good and it made sense, which Peterson did, it seemed like regularly in that interview, Daniel Dennett would just say, yeah, that's science, or that's secularism, or that's just civilization. You know, he would just say things in agreement. And I thought the agreement was, it was significant. I felt like it was significant because I would expect Daniel Dennett to kind of, you know, I mean, he is an older man now. Maybe back in the day, he would have been a little more spry and be able to, I don't know, be a little bit more energetic about these things. But I expected him to like argue a little bit more with Peterson about stuff.
Duke Edinburgh, who I don't recognize I don't recognize Duke Edinburgh at all. KL mentions the book is coming out. Has all of this sort of lost its edge? I mean, and Peterson included, because you know, this was an argument made by David Fuller. Well, so one of the conversations, little sub conversations I had this week was, you know, Peterson's influence. And influence, just by virtue of the word, we sort of imagine just sort of a discrete scale that it's plus or minus, that you can talk about that. You really can't, because there's lots of different kinds of influence. And so I think on one hand, Peterson seems to have really lined up some very interesting arguments that make it very difficult to just dismiss religion as wooey stuff or supernatural stuff. But yet Peterson isn't often heard in other areas. So how does this conversation what does this conversation tell us about not only who Daniel Dennett is and the the status of new atheism, but also even Jordan Peterson? Maybe it's a bad question. Grace, you want to say something before everybody just ignores the rest of my question?
Well, you remember if you will, Jordan Peterson is one of the four horsemen of meaning from his Apocalypse of Meaning conversation with Johnson Pageau, Jean Vervaeke, and Bishop Robert Barron.
Yes.
And that was like, I don't know, a failed branding attempt for the upper echelon of the corner, perhaps.
Or maybe just a video title, but a failed branding attempt. Yeah, I'm sure they would have loved that to have taken wing.
Like for people to write it up, like, oh look, the new four horsemen. But anyway, the important thing is, I think you guys are missing a wonderful opportunity. You're here on top of the fourth wall with Pastor Paul Van de Clay, and you're demonstrating a behind the fourth wall behavior. Card for this appearance is the 9 of Hearts. You see, the thing is, what we get is Jordan Peterson taking all of his best ideas and putting them gently in front of an opponent. And you can cut Daniel Dennett out of that entire thing and like think with Jordan Peterson. You can like, okay, well, and that's what I did on my lovely highlights, Dennett Peterson highlights thing on the Griswold Grimm channel. Thank you very much.
Not to lose not to pass up a chance to promote the channel. So, all right. Well, what do you think? What do you think about what Grizz said or what I said?
I mean, as far as Peterson's influence, or is it Wayne? Like, it's sort of like the long. All of his content that he talks about seems like it was done in his Maps of Meaning seminars, and he's gotten better at saying it, and he's like got better at presenting them, and these kinds of things. But I don't know if like the Peterson has really expanded on anything significantly. I don't know. It seems like we're like from Maps of Meaning, we're kind of all sort of talking through the implications of it, I guess. And
I think I'm looking forward to his new book.
Did you read his last one, the 12 More Rules?
No, I haven't. I didn't. I
didn't either.
Some of it. I've heard it's better than the first 12 rules, but I think he's a better speaker than than writer, for one thing. I think his best. It's interesting that what I thought his two best works were his classroom lectures and then his Genesis series. The Exodus seminar was supposed to be a precursor to a standalone Exodus series, and I wondered how that would be. Now his We Who Wrestle with God series is a what? You know, again, he's doing the traveling show thing, which doesn't really come to California anymore, which is, I'd really love to know the reason for that. I'm sure there's reasons because California is a big audience. But we don't get, number one, we don't get the Jordan Peterson, the discipline of the Jordan Peterson lecturer. And I think that discipline that he had of having to take obviously what is a vast amount of well thought through material and make it digestible to an undergraduate college audience, that discipline produced something really good, much better than the book Maps of Meaning, which was an academic technical work, which was also sort of tortured in terms of how it was written. As what he said, I went through every sentence, yada, yada, yada. So that discipline, and I think also the discipline of being a clinician was really helpful, because in both of those cases, you tune yourself to your audience, and that kind of discipline really forces some things into you. And I think part of the difficulty with a book is it doesn't have the discipline of the audience to be right there. And it also doesn't have the touring, which should ideally give a degree of discipline for a general audience, but not like a college lecture. Because in that room of 30 or 40 undergrads, you can see, are they dozing off? Are they, because they're dragging themselves into class. And so I think part of what has not served Jordan Peterson has been his loss of some platforms that I think really honed him and disciplined him in a way that his new situation doesn't afford.
Yeah, I think that's right, Paul, on some level, because it's why I'm, my own, like, for just to talk about me here for a second, sorry, but I have a point. It's like I teach every day, like I'm in front of, 15, 16, 17 kids, and, there is no more unforgiving of an audience on one hand, right, than a 15 or 16-year-old kid who's, I'm talking about Homer or Dante or whatever I'm talking about. But on the other hand, like they know me, and like I know them, and that the body language portion of it is very much underrated. And boy, did you learn that in the middle of the whole COVID thing, because all of a sudden I am 2-dimensional versus 3-dimensional and and 4-dimensional, to quote Grimm, right? I mean, there's something true to that. But I would say I think that the touring is an attempt to substitute for that, and it's not the same thing, but I do think it works, and I think it's why those things are ultimately more effective than his YouTube, than his sort of either his one-on-one conversations or even that kind of roundtable situation that I don't particularly care for, which I'm a little surprised by. And then so that is what, so the writing, I think you're right, he's a teacher. I mean, and I really do believe he's a teacher, and there's that close twin of being a teacher and being a therapist. You know, they're very, very similar. It's like they're on sort of the same parts of the game, so to speak. And as far as the Dennett stuff is concerned, I mean, I've been sort of listening very closely to the way that he's talking about his new book and the way that he talks about his new book. I think he genuinely believes that he has the silver arrow that he is going to pierce. He's going to. What is the thing in D&D where only the silver works against, I think, vampires or something like that? I really believe he thinks he's got the silver-tipped arrow that is going to sort of pierce the heart of new atheism for good. And I think with all of these conversations he's having, especially with the Dennett thing, I think it's set up. I think he's playing a long game. And again, I could be wrong. I have no idea. And like, whatever, if it works great. I don't particularly need it, but I think his audience does. And so when he has these conversations with a Dennett or a Harris or these kind of guys, he's not having it for us. He's not like we're sort of on Team Peterson, roughly speaking. He's having it for all those young boys, especially, right, that listen to the Dennetts of the world. And, I think he's trying to do an end around because he has seen the face of that despair. The way that he cries about this is now when he reemerged, right? Remember how he cried profoundly when he says, man, boys just need such a small little bit of a dose of heroism, and be called to their better self, a little bit of encouragement. And so to me, I think he's trying to kill that spirit of new atheism. And he's setting these people up. So
no, that's good. That's really helpful.
The last three conversations of Peterson I watched, I felt like Peterson was three different people. So I watched the one with Dennett, which he was, like Dale explained, very sort of polite.
Yes.
Putting his arguments forward the best he can. And I thought he did a great job of laying everything out. Then there was the conversation with McGilchrist, was the other one that I watched. And it seemed like he was trying to just explain to McGilchrist where the edge of his thinking was and hoping McGilchrist could sort of like help him along. Like he was, because and Paul, you talked about your frustration with that conversation. And then the third one, which I just watched yesterday, or maybe it was this morning. I listened to it this morning. It was the one with the climate scientist guy. And he just sort of asked questions and tried to restate what the guy was saying, like summarize things. And so I felt like there was like three different people.
Jess, and then there's the fourth one, right? Remember the conversation with Destiny? So think about what he's doing here. He's in a weird sort of way, he's not even having a conversation with the person he's having a conversation with. He's doing a performance, right? Paul, I've been telling you about this for years, but this weird getup that I know people think I'm like the denim guy. Okay, all that sort of fun stuff aside, he's playing a role. He's playing a role, right? And this is kayfabe, right? And I love kayfabe. So full disclosure, I believe in LARPing. I believe in performativity and all that sort of stuff. But I think he's having the conversations for his audience. It's the same reason why people are in a rush to have somebody like Andrew Tate on their channel or their stream. I don't think it's about sucking up to Andrew Tate. I think it's trying to get at Andrew Tate's audience. It's trying to get at Destiny's audience. It's trying to get at Daniel Dennett's audience. That's what he's doing.
But I think Jess's point that he's trying to get at these audiences towards different ends. And I think it's a really interesting question. What ends is he actually pursuing with this?
I think Jordan's title of his new book sort of says where he's been at for the last 7 years. Start with maps of meaning and make that just the framework which Jordan looks through. And he's suddenly trying to apply that through all of history, through all the biblical text, that type of thing. And I think that's Jordan's journey. A lot of times when I see him arguing, especially with people he really respects, I see him wrestling with himself on the question, trying to make sure he has it fit in. I'm not sure what his motivations are exactly, but I typically see him genuinely try and do these other people's ideas match with mine.
Yeah, I think that's true. Interesting. No, this has been really good. It's been really helpful.
I gotta run. I'll see you boys.
All right. Anything else on Peterson or Peterson Dennett? All right. Now I'm going to go to the other or the next, which is now it's a little unfair because it's a no wait, no ads, and I've only done one little clip, but I also integrated a clip. My conversation with Wokel. Oh, there was one thing I was going to say about the Peterson thing that I didn't say. If you look at, oh, come on. This is, so if you go to the Jordan Peterson, so if you're logged into Daily Wire and you go to the Jordan Peterson thing, and he has a good number of his lectures from the Beyond Order tour all the way to his last one, which was the one here in Wheatland, California, which was the one that I was at. We're not seeing that. And I suspect they're all recorded. I don't think that they would not record them because I think they're too important to not record. But it's going to be interesting just in terms of leaving a body of work, what that will mean. All right, so back to the next one. Local distance. I'm just going to make some comments about this and that and see if there's anything that anybody wants to pick up on. I know it's not out on the full channel yet. It's in No Wait, No Ads. You know, a bunch of you have seen it already. And yeah, really enjoyed my conversation with Local Distance. And it was interesting. He really wanted to, he had approached me a while ago wanting to do another conversation. And again, like I said, I'm trying to catch up with my backlog. And so I was able to get him in. And I thought it was a good conversation. I know he's a controversial person in the corner and controversial along the woke and unwoke lines. And so I thought it was excellent. And then also the Homath. Homath came about because we have a mutual acquaintance. And that acquaintance said, would you like to talk to him? And I thought, sure, I'd love to talk to him because I'm really curious about who he is and what he's doing. And again, I thought it was a really good conversation. And so both of those conversations are going to come out to the full channel next week. They're in No Wait, No Ads right now if you really, really can't wait. But I thought they were both good. And I've got another video that's got a little clip along with some other stuff that I put in of the Homath conversation, and that's coming. All right, so there's just a couple of things about that. And again, I think probably not enough people have seen much from it, but all right, so general conversation. If anybody wants to come in and talk about whatever you want to talk about, the water is fine. So it can be, okay. Talk about. Oh, I got you in right away. Sorry, Dale. I was fast this time.
I just wanted to introduce you to my pet squirrel.
Oh my word.
My dog brought a 2-week-old squirrel in the house 8 weeks ago, drops it under the table. Now I got 3 kids, 12, 10, and 8. The squirrel was totally unharmed. So what do? You start feeding a squirrel for 2 months to release him into the wild. Where is he? He's here somewhere. There he is.
He's astoundingly tame.
He's still totally squirrel. He's not scared of you at all. I would absolutely not want to have him as a pet. I got scratches all over my hands from every time I feed him. But he's not scared, but he's a little bit skittish. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if all of a sudden he'll jump on the top of my monitor or something. The thing could jump like 3 feet already. But I just wanted to, show you squirrel.
So what have you learned about squirrels?
Where do you think?
Well, yeah, they get your hand scratched.
YouTube.
No, not where did you learn about squirrels? What have you learned about squirrels?
They will never be a good pet. That's an absolute. Do not have a squirrel as a pet. I'm ready to get. His name is Lucky for obvious reasons. And this guy has. I mean, it's like, if it wouldn't be for 3 kids, this squirrel would have already died at the bottom of the garbage pail because it was Ash Wednesday. We had to go to church just before the dog brings it in. I drop him at the bottom of the garbage. So now we're coming back from Ash Wednesday and we hear a squirrel peeping in the garage. So I was like, oh man, now what do? I got 3 kids, 12, 10, and 8. What are you going to do? Just, kill the squirrel? Can't happen.
Can't do that. Can't do that.
You can't do that. So you start reading, and the things you got to do is first you put a heating pad on him because he was ice cold. I thought he was dead when I first picked him up. He was ice cold. So I put a heating pad underneath a little, we got rodents. Like we had 3 rats in a huge cage at home as friends. So I had a big cage for them later on that I popped off the bottom of them. So you put a heating pad on them, warm them up, then go buy the pedal light that you used to buy for your kids when they were throwing up all the time, getting dehydrated. You give him that. He warms up, starts perking up, and then you start getting syringe and just feed him puppy formula. They make a formula just for orphan puppies. You grab 1 millimeter syringes and just start feeding him that for like 5% of his weight. So he started out like 50 grams, and now he's like 350.
Are you keeping him in a container or something, or he's just got free rule of the house?
Well, a good rat cage. No, he doesn't run the house at all. He's in a big cage. A rat cage is about 2.5 foot by 4 foot by 6 foot high. Okay, but it's it's actually 4 stories, but it's separated by 2 stories. So we just blocked off the bottom one, and that's the rat's territory for a couple months. But now I can go up there, I open the cage and say, come here, and he walks right into my hand to get fed. I mean, he's not skittish of you at all. He's skittish of my 2 dogs. I got
right, understandably so.
I got a video of him standing on a little piece of wood, my 2 dogs looking at him, and my cat looking at him all at the same time, and squirrel's just sitting there. But anyway.
Wow.
So this is lucky. That's all.
Well named.
Okay.
Congratulations, Lucky. You found yourself a good home.
I don't remember the video you were talking about in the members only. So.
All right. So how to nurse a squirrel. There we go. So Mark has a question. We have a wall in the house we call the guest wall, where any guest we have can paint anything they want. I recommend this for anyone. Wife's idea. That's pretty good. Was that your question, Mark? Is that your question, Mark? Otherwise, Mark, if you want to come on, if you want to jump, you've got the link. So anybody with the link can jump in right now, and we will entertain your thought. Otherwise, I'll close the stream. If the stream is done, we only have 10 minutes. Maybe I'll drop a little bit of branding because we got chastised by the Grizz for the fourth wall.
Approaches are that's where the alignment is between Grim and I.
Okay, so what is bringing down the fourth wall project, Grim?
A terrible spell, and part of that spell, the humans have the campfire circuitry. For whatever reason, probably because it. So like, the television engages that, and like that's when your tribal elders are passing on information and stuff. So like those things are hijacked and make everybody feel like their audience. And like if you watch characters in series that do break the fourth wall, and that's what the fourth wall I'm referencing when I do it. It's the wall behind which you are audience and not a human. So
okay.
Hashtag paintball for Jesus, @GrimGrizz, hashtag break the fourth wall.
So like you do like break the fourth wall that doesn't exist and be like,
break the fourth wall a little bit.
You really helped me break the fourth wall. Like, it's just people.
Good poetry is it's definitely always trying to break the fourth wall.
Always tried, as GrimGrizz says, to break the fourth wall to the degree that I can. Oh, we had 2 people in and out, and now here's Ron. How you doing, Ron?
Hi, Paul. How are you?
I'm doing fine. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm at work. I'm on the clock. Don't tell anybody. I'm paper picking today on campus.
All right.
Internet, don't tell my boss. I just wanted to say hi. I think everyone, I just want to let you, my opinion is if there's ever a zombie apocalypse, you guys are in trouble because they're going to love your brains. I mean, you guys.
All right. Mark, how are you?
Hi, Paul.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, how do you back on the Peterson Dennett thing? And I think Kale mentioned that he's doing battle with guys like Dennett for the kids who might be influenced by Dennett. But the fact is I think the kids are probably listening more to people like Pine Creek and his ilk, and what's the other? Alex O'Connor, who I think are much sharper atheists, who would probably give Jordan a run for his money, maybe just because they're young. I don't know. I'm often overwhelmed by the young minds we have in the TLC. Yeah. So, how do you think Jordan would hold up there in terms of his project against those interlocutors?
I think we like to imagine that two people on a stage in chairs or on a screen are going to somehow solve some of this stuff for people. It's not that it's disconnected and doesn't work and nothing happens, but Alex O'Connor, Jordan Peterson's going to have a conversation with Alex O'Connor at some point. That's going to happen. Alex, what's more interesting to me is watching, so I've seen a fair amount of Alex O'Connor over the last 6 months, just watching Alex in a number of different settings talk, because I think actually you learn much more about their worldview watching that, because it's again, I think it's part of sort of the modernist fallacy that it's just sort of like this. We don't really live in the plane of the monarchical vision. So somebody left a comment in the Dennett video where he's basically talking about science, and it's like that kind of it's basically what Alan was saying too, how once your science gets so absolutely pure, it's unattainable. It's like certain ideas about infallibility and revelation. It's like, okay, well, maybe the revelation's pure, but once you interact with it, you've now sullied it. So I don't know where it's going. I think I like what Jess said about the different modes, and I think Peterson, I didn't think the mode with Destiny, I don't know, maybe Kale is also right that that's about Destiny's audience more than Destiny, because I didn't see that as a terribly productive conversation. I thought both went in there, and what they didn't want to do is have their audience say, oh, look, you got totally owned. You let Destiny say this and this and this, and you didn't contest him. So, I played the conversation with Vaush, and many people like that conversation. They say, oh, Paul did very well. There are a group of people in the corner that say that was a terrible conversation because you let Vaush get away with murder. And my point is, how are you going to stop Vaush from saying what he's going to say? What exactly is the standard? You want to drive them off the stage? You want to humiliate them? And so what I think we're seeing is that this game of having conversations with us is much more complex and nuanced than the marquee suggests. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I just feel like I guess I was responding more to Kale's point that he thought that Jordan is doing battle for the kids. And I think he's just a little too dusty for the kids. I mean, he's just a little threadbare, Yeah. I think that and the really tough guys out there are really, kind of career asshats like Pine Creek Doug, but he's a very effective asshat, right? I mean, he's so relentlessly rude, and so he gets his point through at a level of clarity that I think someone even like Alex O'Connor can't. Huh. Even if what he creates is ultimately a less effective argument. Yeah. Alex O'Connor is a vastly smarter person than Pine Creek, but in terms of bare knuckle street fighting atheism, Pine Creek is very effective. And that would be my concern, is saying, and I don't know how well Jordan would hold up to that or not. I don't know how well we hold up to that. If anything, maybe somebody more like Luke Thompson would probably respond better to Pine Creek than someone like Jordan.
If you want to watch a fun Pine Creek, this is a good comment by Moralon. Rudeness and dunking works well in younger audiences, but I think a lot of people get tired of it. I think that's true. So the audience is very much a thing. If you want to watch a fun Pine Creek conversation, so I often play Dog Bark's music at the beginning and the end of this, and there's the link to his channel. On his channel, he has conversations with Pine Creek, and they're absolutely hilarious. Because also, so another guy here did a Randos conversation with Dog Bark, and it's on his channel, James R. Henry, and you'd probably never be able to find it. But so he gets into Dog Bark's life, and it's just so much fun watching Pine Creek talk to someone like Dog Bark, because it's just like,
Exactly. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Paul.
All right. Thanks, Mark. All right, Stephen, you wanted to get on a little bit.
Just had a question for you, Paul. It seems like everybody is being asked to deconstruct their priors in a lot of these conversations, even Dennett. But nobody's right now is immune from their priors being deconstructed.
Oh, that's
and one thing that brought it up was the Candace Owens Shapiro Israel-Palestine thing, because there were some things that we didn't even know were on the horizon that were about to be deconstructed. And you had the triumphant Daily Wire conservative juggernaut, and now it's their turn almost, or Shapiro types, to be deconstructed. So my question to you,
I have paid zero attention to that whole thing, because I'm not really in any way interested in either Ben Shapiro.
Well,
so I didn't even know what they're fighting about.
Well, for me, the phenomenon is just the fact that things that you weren't allowed to deconstruct are now being deconstructed, and there's nothing they can do about it. But my question to you is, what is the place that's going to be, that people are going to build and not be deconstructed? I think that's what your project is, amongst others, is what's going to be left, the last thing that's not deconstructed, or what's going to, I don't know. Everything's weird right now, because the other question I had is, what institution and what person in popular life is free from that phenomenon? That the guy, like, I know people personally that, like, they're stout people, they're people, but it's like, there's a guy that you can rely on that you could deconstruct, but we don't do that with this guy. I don't know what that is in our society. What institution is left, or what person's left that we don't deconstruct that?
Well, it could be that what happens is that institutions and personas finally just don't exist. And it could be a version of, let's say, Nate Heil anarchism, where, I mean, part of what's interesting with Dog Bark talking to this atheist is it's sort of like having an argument with Dale's squirrel. This is not going to, and I think it's that kind of secure faith that people find attractive. Now, you can sort of raise it up and say, well, these are my objections to it. Well, that's fine. I've got plenty of objections to my own beliefs, but I've lived with those objections long enough that they're kind of like the squirrel over there. It's like, yeah, it's over there, but I'm not going to change, because I know what that is, and I know what I am, and I've made my choice, and I'm going to live with it. And whether or not you can agree or disagree with my choice, that's fine, but it's neither here nor there when it comes to how I live or behave. So that's, I think so when we see Ben Shapiro or Candace Owens or Jordan Peterson or Daniel Dennett we are seeing now we're going to get really postmodern. We are seeing a representation of them on a screen. And there's truth in that representation. But part of what the internet is doing is revealing the fact that Jordan Peterson is three-dimensional in a way that his books, his lectures, all of these things can never be. And that's sort of what's nice about the exclusive Daily Wire conversation with Daniel Dennett, which find out that he liked to play with an erector set and he wanted to be an engineer. And I think that's part of the reason that the TLC and the Randos conversations are getting traction, is because we are seeing in three-dimensionality, and let's say the first personness or the personalness, that all of this other stuff that entire debate up here is all in the third person. And we have now adopted a certain degree of skepticism with respect to everything up there. Now, the truth is you can't live without this, and you can't live without this. And what modernity said is that this means nothing and it's only this. And it's like, no, it's just not true. And so now what we learn is that actually life is lived in community between, in the middle, and much more in the second person. And that's sort of where I see the conversation heading towards.
And that's part of your project, is just the relational aspect.
Right. So you can, exactly.
And that's a lot of what is challenging in general, is making people believe what they know is already true. But if you go out and garden with your family in the backyard and turn off the internet, there's your balm for what ails you. But it's not as fun or sexy.
And so there was a question in there about the meta-modernity conversation with Brendan Dempsey. And there was I didn't get a chance to respond to it on Twitter. I might make a video about it. But I mean, so Brendan Dempsey is trying to figure out, okay, how can we sort of get beyond the modernist, postmodernist impasse with respect to Christianity? And people are trying to locate, let's say, meta-modernity up in the aspects that are all in the third person. So this is what we're going to do with Biblicism and history and the Bible. And so we're going to have all of these meta-modernity is going to have, we're going to be able to frame the dogmas and doctrines and perspectives of meta-modernity, and that's what it will be. And I think, no, that's exactly wrong. Meta-modernity is going to be extremely chaotic, and this is going to really disrupt confessional systems in churches. And so when one of the most interesting conversations recently in one of Luke's live streams was this question of orthodoxy. And when I look at a lot of the people going to orthodoxy now, I see a lot of meta-modernity in that, okay, it's not necessarily my profession, but it's my practice. But then, of course, Sam is basically calling BS on a bunch of this. It's like, no, orthodoxy actually does have structure. Yeah, but in other ways, it's sort of super pre-modern. And in some ways, we're talking about, let's say, Catholicism before Luther. Carlos Eyre makes a good argument that Luther forced Catholicism to change in many respects. So I'm reading through Carlos Eyre's other book on They Flew, and it's just fascinating because, from an evidentialist perspective, it seems absolutely wrong to be skeptical about, let's say, Joseph of Cupertino's levitations. They seem to happen to the dude all the time. And to just be a stupid materialist that say levitation doesn't happen, therefore they never happened. C.S. Lewis debunked this a long time ago. He says that's not really what evidence is and how it works. So that Joseph of Cupertino was levitating so often that it became a serious problem, even in the very interesting milieu Protestant Catholic debates that were happening, that they had to try and imprison him. But every time they tried to imprison him, he would keep levitating and people would sort of keep sneaking people in to watch him leave the ground. I mean, it's a crazy story. But to say it never happened, no, there's just way too much evidence. What we're really struggling with is we can't fit that into our structure. So the Catholics wanted to say, see, Luther's wrong. And the Protestants wanted to say, see, it's of the devil, which is exactly what some people in the Inquisition were saying. In other words, we're having problems with the structure. And so certain people who have gone into orthodoxy, let's say someone like Paul Kingsnorth, seems to be, he's got a very high tolerance for chaos in his theological system. And so for him, orthodoxy sort of works. Because unlike Protestants that are tied into their confessionalism, well, they're more tied into the liturgy and they're more tied into the apostolic succession. And they're more tied into these other structures, which are pre-modern. Now, does that mean that suddenly Protestantism is going to go away? It's just like, no, because as my talk with Vocal Distance, Pentecostals are super this way too. And Protestants, as Sam was making the point in that live stream, they're also super this way. So what we're seeing is basically the tension between the first and the third person, and we're renegotiating it. And that's actually where the meta-modernity is. Not so much in, oh, these are the dogmas of meta-modern Christianity. No, it's really resistant to creating third-person abstract dogmas. And again, people are going to say, well, what about the creeds? Yeah, what about the creeds? Because the creeds are this way. And then when you listen to someone like, Father DeYoung or some of these other Orthodox saying, well, the creeds, actually it wasn't Father DeYoung, it was Jeremy in that same thing. He said, well, once you write something down, and that's what we're dealing with. But the thing is, you can't actually have an institution or a structure or even a significantly scaled community without using those tools that ossify. And so to me, that's exactly where we're at. And I think it makes sense to a lot of people in the corner, because actually what we're doing in the corner is this is exactly the stuff we're playing with. So there's a little rant. I'll clip it.
All right, I got to go. See you.
All right. Thanks, Stephen. All right. Last word comes from the corner citizen.
Hey, Paul. Yeah, I was just watching your talk with H Math, and one of the things that struck me, it was great convo with him. Also, if anybody knows Owen Cyclops, I got this very similar vibes between Owen Cyclops and him. Yeah, with the whole spiritualism and his news and conspiracies are everywhere. Oh, absolutely.
Oh, interesting.
He's a more focused left brain version of that. Owen Cyclops seems very creative, not as industrious. And then H Math seems the opposite. So I got this very similar vibe. But the thing I wanted to talk about was H Math was like, oh, I have experience with like really short-term relationships, and now sort of like I have experience with some of this stuff, but I don't really have this long game mapped out, so I can't really put out content on it. I'm like, well, that limits your like use, because the end of the story is going to inform the beginning of the story, and you're not step functioning anyway. And I'm like, I appreciate a lot what he says, but I'm just like, now we're getting to the actual problem, and it's very frustrating because I'm looking, I feel like this is where people start to get super Eastern, super, well, you'll just accept all things and no answers and nothing matters. And, oh, your wife left you and you have 9 children. Well, the spirit of the age is to accept. I'm just like, there's a reason why people are listening to not the church. There's a reason why when you tell me the spirits and wow, that sounds really tough. I mean, if anybody tells me one more time, that sounds difficult, that sounds tough, I'm going to punch myself in the face. Like, don't tell me it's difficult. Huh? what? Excuse me? I'm the one experiencing it. I'm, and it's just like, oh, wow.
But they assumed you just wanted to be heard.
Yeah.
You just wanted to feel heard. I know there's a level, we're getting cloyed by the therapeutic right now. We really are.
Yeah. And I think like it goes into the propositional in that, yeah, you need to say things are good or bad. You need to say that you have to do something or not do something. HMath is telling guys to do things, even define what you want. It doesn't even have to be as direct, but it can be define what you want and make steps and get feedback so you can become that thing.
Yeah.
And that's actually actionable. And the irony is that I think basically what you're breeding with even the cloying sort of I'm listening, I'm hearing is just breeding. Well, now I know there is no answer. There's no fire alarm to pull. Right. So that I need to become what HMath is saying. I need to become as big and ubermenschy as possible so that anyone I'm in relationship with will never want to cross me because I'm offering I have all the sticks and all the carrots. Yeah. I'm so excellent that if you're my friend, I can give you anything you want. And if you're my enemy, I can hit you with as many sticks as I can. And HMath even had a video where he had his like girlfriend on it. And he's like, he's having her walk through the system where she's like, I had a thought that I actually was attracted to this guy who wasn't HMath. But then I realized that liking HMath is actually good, and leaving and abandoning for dream men who aren't real is bad. And I'm like, okay, that's fine to walk your girlfriend through this thought process of how you logically make that decision. But you're never always going to be big enough that you're always the answer. Eventually you get hit by the car and you're a paraplegic, and it's actually like, oh, that male nurse who's attending to you's got really big biceps. So it's like, it's just like, it's frustrating because in the one hand, yeah, okay, I'm going to ascend and I'm going to try and be big to scare off other grizzly bears, stand on your hind legs and look big and strong. But at the same time, you can't build the structure that makes your wife not want to leave you for the big biceps male nurse, step function wise. You can't do it individually, by definition. And so it's just, it has to be, so I know I'm on a rant.
Chris, now you're going to be old math. You're going to have to change your name.
So the I don't know, this was a long rant, but the point just being it's very, when you try to talk about, okay, we need containers, we need groups, and yeah, enough. I'm getting enough. I'm getting Uno reversed on my enough.
Foxman has turned the tables on you, my friend.
Oh, not good, folks.
Maybe that's a good place to land the plane. And so thank you, Alan. Thank you, everyone who came in. And I haven't done the choo-choo train yet. I haven't gotten that into the system here. So maybe drop a little Freddie and Charles J.
Fast Freddy G knows it all. That's my old name, G. Where are you here?
Oh, there I am. Hey.
Where are you? Where?
Got me?
Oh boy. Yeah. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me.
Come on, Peter.
Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. All along this Jesus journey. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. Yeah.
Walk with my mama.
Yeah, walk with my mama.
Walk with me.
Walk with me too.
You walk with my mama.
Yeah.
Walk with me.
And walk with me too.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jesus journey.
I want Jesus.
Want Jesus.
Walk with me.
Walk with me. Hold my hand, Lord. Hold my hand. Hold my hand, Lord. Hold my hand. All along this Jesus journey. Hold my hand, Lord. And hold my hand. Walk with
Moses.
You walk with Moses.
Walk with me.
Walk with me.
You walk with Moses. Walk with me.
Walk with me.
While I'm home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jesus journey.
I want Jesus.
I want Jesus to walk with me.
Say, walk with me, Lord. How y'all doing?
Walk with me. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. Walk with me.
I'm on my
Yeah, Lord.
I want Jesus.
I want Jesus
to walk with me.
To walk with me. Walk with David, a little shepherd boy. Yeah, you made him a great king. I know David shouted for joy. He walked with David, and he's a little shepherd boy. You made him a great king. And David shouted for joy.
That's right.
Oh, yeah. So walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. All along this Jesus journey. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. You gotta walk with me, Lord.
Yeah! That was rocking great, brother.
Oh, yeah.